Hi, and welcome to another episode of She Leads Biotech, the podcast where we celebrate the achievements of women in the life sciences. Once upon a time, a physician with a background in neuroscience and translational research met a bioengineer with a passion for building real-world solutions. In a research lab at the University of Washington, what began as two very different academic paths quickly evolved into a shared mission. Today, they're the co-founders behind a company tackling a problem that has been hiding in plain sight in ophthalmology. And in doing so, they are rethinking how therapies are delivered to patients. To tell us more about NanoDropper and their work in ophthalmology, please welcome Chief Executive Officer Allisa Song and Chief Commercial Officer Mackenzie Andrews of Mu Medical.
Hello. Hello, ladies.
Hey. Hello. Hi, Sharon.
How are you, Alyssa? Good?
Doing well. It is nice and sunny here in Rochester.
Well, yes, it's nice and sunny here in New York. It's just cold, I think. It's still chilly.
Yeah, we're out here in Rochester, Minnesota, actually. So the sun and the warmth is very welcome.
And Mackenzie, you're unseasonably warm where you are in Denver, right?
Yeah, it is crazy warm for the time of year. So, not complaining here in Denver, but the mountains are not super happy.
And I'm complaining here in New York, but being British, that's all we do is complain about the weather. So that's nothing really feeling, so don't worry about that. Well, listen, both of you, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to talk about your product and your journey. I want to start and asking you independently, and Alyssa, maybe you'll start with me. Before we get involved in the company, just each of you individually, what was your path into healthcare innovation? Because I think they were both pretty different, weren't they? Alyssa, what was yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So my academic journey started in Seattle. I went to the University of Washington where I studied biology and psychology, did neuroscience research for about 8 years, translational as well as benchtop research. And I really loved what we were doing. We were studying the opioid, one of the subtypes of the opioid receptor called kappa opioid receptor, and its role in modulating chronic stress and addiction behaviors. I thought that was really my path going forward, but I got curious on what the work that we were doing in the lab, how it was actually affecting real human lives. And so I started volunteering for a Harm Reduction Alliance and found that work incredibly rewarding to be the person actually delivering the care. And so that was my inspiration for why I wanted to go into clinical medicine. Um, I went to medical school at Mayo Clinic, which is what brings me to Minnesota, and
Right.
I've been here ever since. But along that journey, my introduction to entrepreneurship was quite accidental. And so it was a little bit of a detour from what I thought my future career had in store for me.
Store for you. Okay. So
Yes,
should we see
yes.
what Mackenzie's journey was in how she got
Yeah.
started, and then we can expand that out to where you found yourself. Mackenzie, what was your journey like?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of jump off of the theme of the accidental entrepreneur, similar to Alyssa, but my academic journey also started at the University of Washington in Seattle. I was studying bioengineering and neuroscience as an undergrad when I joined the same research lab as Alyssa. So I was also very much involved in the academic research side of things, but I was a little bit more interested in the engineering, the actual building of solutions, both physical as well as computational or software focused. I stayed in that research lab for 5 years through my master's in bioengineering. And during that time is when kind of our, what at the time was a side quest that now turned into the main quest of our company got started. But yeah, I was really interested in the work that our lab was doing, looking at the relationship between stress and drug abuse or drug seeking behaviors. Um, and I really thought that I was kind of going to go down the path of like neural engineering, neural computation, something maybe more in the industry research setting. Never thought that we would end up where we are today, but couldn't be happier.
So were you like besties from when you first met, or were you from each side of the lab going, what's she doing? And how did you get together?
Yeah, a little bit more the latter, I think. We were
Okay.
working in the same research lab, but we really didn't have a ton of overlap in what we were actually doing as research colleagues in the lab. So, like I said, I was kind of more on the engineering side. I was actually the only engineer in the lab. So I was working on a lot of kind of like the tinkering, creating new devices to measure brain activity, as well as creating like software computational tools for the lab to be able to analyze the data that was being collected. And that was not what Alyssa was doing at all. So we had a little bit of
So
overlap. Yeah.
what were you doing, Allisa? And what were your thoughts on Mackenzie? Was she like the engineering nerd in the corner or something, or was she cool, or how did that all work?
Oh, that's so funny. Actually, so what I was doing in the lab was I was looking more at the network, the connection between the front of the brain, our executive function, how those neurons talk to our reward centers, and which neurons are responsible for that, and how are they communicating with each other. So I was doing a lot of confocal microscopy work. I was doing a lot of the surgeries that our team members needed in order to do some of the experiments. And when I first met Mackenzie, her reputation preceded her because I
Oh,
had heard about her
let's
through
listen
one
to
of
her.
my
I love
best
it.
friends in college. And she, I kid you not, like everyone knew Mackenzie as like the superstar, like the famous like woman engineer, like really early on in her career that's doing these really cool projects in and outside of the lab. I think she already had like 2 or 3 other projects that were ongoing when I first approached her. Like she was featured in like the Seattle Times, like on the Sunday like centerfold. And then she was like a powerlifting champion, like if you're listening to this, just Google her name and like Washington State. I think she still is number 1 in the state.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so,
this is going to be in audio, so you're not going to be able to see Mackenzie's face
oh
going
yeah.
crimson about this, going, "What are you talking about there?" So,
Google her name.
so when you, I'm just going to stick with you for a minute, Alyssa. When you thought, so did you do the initial reach out to Mackenzie to say, "Hey, let's team up, we should work together," and what was that approach like? And then Mackenzie, if you can jump in and tell me how you received that approach and what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, yeah. I actually still remember that day. We were in the office side of the lab. I had read the article. I had already pitched the idea to Elias, who is also one of the co-founders. He's a mechanical engineer. I had pitched him on this idea of an aftermarket part, and I realized that in order to get some bootstrapping funds, we would have to be a little creative because, I was just out of school making academia money. So, like, there was no way that I was going to be able to fund this project. So I knew that there were student level competitions with awards and prototyping funds available if you competed. So I thought it would be really cool to bring Mackenzie on since, she is really well known at UW and in our immediate community. And I thought it would be really cool to have a woman engineer as part of the team. Um, it was pretty late in the day already. It was on the office half of the lab, and we were the only two there. And Mackenzie was sitting in the far side of the room, like in front of the windows, I think. Um, where two of one of our assistant professors and then the postdoc at the lab normally hang out. And I'll let Mackenzie finish the story
Yeah.
because I feel like she tells it best.
Yeah. Is that really what happened, Mackenzie? Come on, what's the
That
dirt?
is, yeah, that is exactly what happened. I actually remember Alyssa's specific words. She just turned to me and she goes, I have a proposition. And I was like, okay, where is this going? And then all of a sudden she started talking to me about eye drops and people with glaucoma and this issue of eye drops being too big. And I was just like, where in the world is this going? Like, our lab had nothing to do with eyes, or I knew nothing about eye drops at the time. And I was like so confused. And then she kind of described the idea of what she wanted to develop, and was like, we're going to enter the healthcare design competition. And that's when I was hooked. I was like, okay, I'm a competitive person. That sounds like fun. And I will never forget the next words. She said, and we're going to win. And I was like, okay, I like this energy. So at first I was like, this is going to be a really fun way to kind of apply my classroom engineering education to a real world problem. I also had a really hard time saying no to anything in college. So I was just like always overloading myself. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll like work on this project with you. It'll be like a fun little opportunity to compete and hopefully win and work on this like little engineering project. Little did I know that 8 years later we would be sitting here and it would be the start of my career. But yeah, that's exactly how it went. She approached me what felt like kind of out of nowhere, and the rest is history.
Wow. So the company NanoDropper was with it's Mu Medical now, right?
Yes.
And we'll talk about the change a bit, but this was NanoDropper. This was this product. Allisa, tell me how this came about. Where did this eye drop thing come from, and why is it needed out in the world?
Today's episode is brought to you by CNA USA Executive Search. We support life sciences, biotech, medtech, and advanced therapies companies with search solutions built on credibility, deep networks, and an authentic approach to partnership. If you're hiring, planning ahead, or simply want to learn more about what we do, visit cnasearchusa.com. Now, on to today's conversation.
Yeah, so I was in the middle of my application season for medical schools, and so I still had very little context for what the healthcare system looked like. But on, I think, a Saturday morning, there was a ProPublica article that was picked up by NPR that was titled "Drug Companies Make Eye Drops Too Big and You Pay for the Waste." And it was covering 6 class action lawsuits that had just happened in the East Coast, where Pharma was being sued by ophthalmologists and their patients. And it was over the size of an eye drop. It turns out all eye drops are too big for your eye. Your eye is like an empty glass, and so it has a finite capacity to hold liquid volume. And these eye drops that you find over the counter or in prescription medications are up to 5 times the capacity of the eye. And so it was overflowing, of course, and everyone experiences this when you put it in an eye drop and it makes a mess on your face. It's that excess that's built into the bottle design.
Right.
And what the ophthalmologists and patients were alleging was that Pharma had known about this, and yet they were profiting off of this waste. Unfortunately, the lawsuits went nowhere, which is why this article was written in the first place. But during discovery, all of these clinical trials dating back to the 1980s were uncovered and now publicly available. And it turns out that clinical trial after clinical trial had demonstrated that smaller eye drops, when you actually match the physiology and anatomy of the eye, you're able to not only get the same main therapeutic effect of the medication, you can do that with better side effect profiles. It's actually safer for patients.
Okay.
And that whole story was contrasted with the real live story of a glaucoma patient. Their medications can be up to $600 per bottle without insurance. And when patients run out before insurance is ready to kick in for the next refill, they're stuck at the pharmacy counter having to make that decision of whether to pay out of pocket or skip the rest of the month, which is typically what happens.
Right.
And it was contributing to this enormous burden of, I think it's still up to 25% risk of lifetime risk of irreversible blindness from the disease.
By not keeping the medication going.
Exactly. Yeah, they're
Wow.
not able to take their medication because they can't pay every month $600 to refill early.
Right.
And so I
Okay.
thought, yeah, like if eye drops are too big and patients run out, why don't we make them smaller?
And did you, I don't know if you can jump in on this, Mackenzie. What did you know about all of this? Was this you learned this from Allisa, or was this you were aware of this eyedropper issue yourself anyway?
No, I had no idea, and I think that that is the experience of most people. Is that we've all, for the most part, taken an eye drop at some point, whether it's for pink eye or dry eyes or whatever. Someone in our life or personally has experienced eye drops, and so I think everyone can relate to the experience of putting in a drop and it runs all over your face, but it's not something you really think twice about most of the time. It's just that's
It's just
part of the
annoying.
experience of taking eye drops. Yeah, exactly. And so of course I could have that relation to it and be like, "Oh yeah, like I've taken eye drops before." Like it makes sense that they're too big, like they go all over the place. But no, I had no idea about all of these downstream, really catastrophic issues that millions of folks were going through when these eye drops are actually protecting their vision. And I also had no idea how expensive eye drops could be. The article talked about this, and then as we started kind of diving into this issue, we realized that these drops can be $500+ per bottle per month for these patients. And so when imagine just your average American being at the pharmacy counter being faced with a $500 bill and having to choose, okay, do I pay that out of pocket to get the last week or two of the month of my medication? Or do I just skip a few doses and hope for the best? It really puts into perspective why these folks ultimately oftentimes are making the latter decision, keeping those doses, but ultimately sacrificing their vision. So, everything made logical sense, but I had no understanding of the problem at all before Allisa approached me and I read the article that she was talking about.
Okay. And from at what point, because obviously you're on the commercial side of the business, Mackenzie, at what point did you look and think, actually, this is commercially viable? There's something we could do here. When did that point come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the problem made sense, but, I had my undergrad engineer hat on when I was approaching this, so I don't think it really hit me that this was like a real viable business until we actually entered our very first competition at the University of Washington, got a little bit of, public exposure through that event, and then literally started getting emails and handwritten letters from patients who were
Wow.
firsthand experiencing this problem, and essentially begging us for a solution. They were asking us for or janky early stage prototypes, like so they could use it with their current eye drop bottles. And that is when I think it like actually clicked for me cognitively and emotionally, really, that this was a real problem that real people needed, and we had the solution. And I think that that's kind of when the gears shifted a little bit, and it was no longer this fun little student engineering project, and it was a real business that we had to build and a solution we had to deliver to the patients.
And it was your brainchild, Allisa, right? But when you realized this issue, was your first thought, I can do something about this, or there must be loads of these things on the market, so why isn't somebody doing it? What was going through your mind when you realized that this actually was a problem, but was it something that needed solving?
Yeah. Back in 2017, when I first read the article, this was, pre-AI, pre-Gemini. Like, I couldn't just like ask an LLM to
It's worth
do.
doing.
Yeah. And so I tried to look up a couple things, but I the first thought was actually like, this seems like such an outrageous problem to exist. And if, millions of dollars probably that was spent on these class action lawsuits ended up nowhere, and this article exists on a national platform, um, it must be still a problem. That was kind of my logic, and I think my focus was on how do we create a solution that we can hand directly to patients. I was thinking, I have no idea how insurance works. I don't know anything about the healthcare system. So why don't we just bypass all of that and make an end user product?
Okay.
And Elias, our other co-founder, he's a car guy. So when I approached him, I was like, let's make an aftermarket part. An adapter that, patients can utilize and take back some of that lost power in this whole system that's letting them down.
Can you show us how it works? Can you?
Absolutely. So this is our device, the NanoDropper adapter.
Okay.
To use it, all you have to do is take off the original cap of the eye drop medication bottle and then replace that cap with the NanoDropper. Normally, the NanoDropper comes completely sterile and sealed in a sterile pouch, of course, and pre-assembled. Um, and this cap is a pop-off cap. This is a bright blue medical grade silicone tip, so it contrasts better against a white ceiling. And you invert it and use it exactly like you would normal, and then cap it back on. And it reduces the size of the droplet down to 1/3 of the original. So it makes the same
Wow.
bottle last 3 times as long. And now we've completed 8 clinical trials to show that it can reduce the rate of premature bottle exhaustion by 80%, side effects by 67%, and our most recent trial actually showed superiority over the standard of care eye drops by about 10%.
And Mackenzie, is this on the market now? Is it being sold, and who are you selling it to, and what's your process for that?
Yeah, so we actually launched a product in June of 2020, which, with
Yay!
historical context, it was a very interesting time to be launching a medical product.
Do not
But I
recommend.
no. But at
Goodbye.
the same time, yeah, while there are a lot of course, challenges with launching a product in kind of like the height of COVID, it was also, I think, one of the best times that we could have launched it with our, end users or customers in mind, because ultimately what we're doing is we are saving folks money and we're reducing trips to the pharmacy. And so in, kind of putting all of ourselves back to that time period, like a lot of folks were really worried about paychecks coming in. People didn't want to leave their homes. And in addition, we are also we were also selling directly to eye care clinics where they can utilize the product on their in-office drops. So like the dilating drops or any numbing drops they might be using in the clinic. And these are all small businesses as well. And they were also really worried about financial stability during that period. So kind of putting the customer hat on, it was a really great opportunity for us to be able to offer this solution during this really kind of turbulent time for our patients and small business partners. So yeah, we sell directly to patients. They can get it directly from us. And then we also use eye care clinics. It's kind of a distribution network. So we're now available in over 3,000 eye care clinic locations across all 50 states. For the vast majority of Americans, there's going to be an eye care clinic that's stocking NanoDropper within a few miles of their home. Um, and so we have this wholesale as well as direct to consumer model, and that's allowed us to reach a good number of patients that really need the solution.
Excellent. I expect you're causing a bit of disruption in the insurance market as well, aren't you? Because
Yeah, so actually, there's kind of these the major players in the healthcare industry that people talk about are the P's, right? So you have the patients, the payers or the insurance companies, the providers or the doctors, and pharma. And so they all have very different uh stakes within the healthcare system. So
yeah,
when we think about all of these players, starting with the initial question about insurers is the insurance companies are actually really excited about what we're doing because if you think about it, while of course patients have their out-of-pocket costs for these medications, insurers are actually paying a vast majority of the chunk for these chronic prescription eye drop medications.
right.
And so by allowing every bottle to last up to 3 times as long, we're actually reducing the number of claims that the insurers have to pay for while also improving outcomes for their patients. So when we look at the value equation for the system, where you're looking at patient outcomes and experience divided by the cost of care, we're able to improve the numerator of that, which is the outcomes and experience, while reducing the denominator, which is the cost of care. So we're really improving the value for the whole system, which insurers are actually really excited about. And that is part of our business model as well as working directly with the insurers.
Okay.
Um, when we're looking at pharma, that's a slightly different story, but a lot of folks are actually really surprised to hear that the pharmaceutical companies have also been some of our advocates through all of this, and is actually kind of the future direction that we're taking the business with Mu Medical, which we teased a little bit earlier.
Yes. And I'm going to touch on that at the moment. But one thing I do want to ask, Alyssa, maybe you can help me with this. You are, for those people who can't see, because it's on audio for it, but you're young, attractive women, clearly got head on your shoulders, and how have you been perceived out in the marketplace, in the business world, and how have you handled that?
That's a great question. It's definitely a flex that I still get carded, and I probably will for the next hopefully 20 years. But
It still
in
happens
the
to me. Listen, so I know.
but in the business world, when you look at especially a hard tech, so like physical devices, um, it's rare to see women CEOs and C execs. And it's even rarer to see venture backed startups that are woman founded. Um, it hasn't been an advantage, I will say for sure, that I look younger than my age. Um, and I'm actually quite petite as well in person. So, the virtual part helps a little bit. But when you look at the statistics, women founded startups generate twice the ROI for investors. and they make up about 15% of the total startup group.
Yep.
However, we receive less than now. I think the most recent numbers were even worse than they were when we first started out. It's dropped from like 2% down to like, I think the last numbers I saw was 1.1% of total venture capital funding.
Yeah.
So I think that really highlights and validates the experience that we've had in trying to raise funding for NanoDropper and now Mu Medical. But we've also been so fortunate, like seeing those statistics, to be venture backed and have multiple venture capital firms supporting us and really championing us.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Mackenzie? Has your experience been the same or?
Yeah, I mean the eye care industry kind of focusing in more on our specific kind of corner of the healthcare system is a fairly male dominated field still. And so when we're going to conferences or meeting with potential customers, we are definitely very much the minority, being women in that space. And so um, I think that that has definitely come with its own set of challenges. We don't look like the typical, especially hardware founders in the eye care space.
Yep.
And, I definitely have plenty of kind of tangents that I could recount of, being at conferences and being assumed to be like a quote unquote booth babe, or, just being like the young female company rep that was sent to conferences being told that basically being like trying to be educated on my own company, even being told that there is a different CEO to the company and having
Oh
to
my
explain
gosh, that was a
to these
whole
people that
thing.
I'm pretty sure I know who the CEO is. Just experiences like that that I think that are maybe a little bit more common because we are younger looking women in this very male dominated space. But we have found kind of on the flip side of that, that once folks get to know us, that I think that it's also helped us kind of create this brand name and kind of also set us apart from some of
Yep.
the other folks in the industry. So, once folks actually get to know who we are, understand our business, understands, the rigor that's behind our products,
Yep.
I think it has helped us build a really positive brand image and a really recognizable founder team. So definitely a double-edged sword with maybe a little bit more upfront footwork needed to get respect and validation from our peers and our colleagues. But there are, silver linings to all of that as well.
Good. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. So, Allisa, tell me about this evolution into Mu Medical. Is it Mu Medical? Mu Medical?
Mu Medical.
What's
Yeah.
driven that?
Yeah, so mu is the Greek alphabet symbol for micro, and it's our homage to where we started with NanoDropper. We're really looking at the whole ophthalmology and like ocular therapeutic space. We learned a lot about the supply chain of how medications are created, how the research process is done, and like where big pharma fits in, manufacturing. And once we started putting these puzzle pieces together, and we were looking at it from the perspective of like, is anyone going to solve this problem from the source? Because NanoDropper is an aftermarket part, it's an adapter, it's a band-aid solution. But who is going to step up and like fix this problem so that there is a world out there, there's a future where NanoDropper and products like NanoDropper don't need to exist.
Yep.
And after learning about the fragmented system in ocular therapeutics and drug development, we realized that there's no one else coming to our rescue. We have to build it. And so we took on this really big project now more than 18 months ago, where we looked at all of the missing components in that supply chain. And we decided to build an ecosystem so that we can bring precision to ocular therapeutics. We expanded our portfolio from just the customer-facing product to creating solutions for drug development companies. They, entrepreneurs always talk about this of like the magic of the market pull when the clients come to you and ask for solutions for them. And that's really what happened in creating all of our primary packaging solutions, where, every future topical ophthalmic or eye drop medications will come packaged with our technology.
Okay.
And to close the loop of the ecosystem, we built out a suite of software products so that we can add clinical intelligence to this whole ecosystem.
Excellent. And what about the how does the evolution change affect the commercial strategy and partnerships? Will it impact there as well, Mackenzie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So essentially every new product and new kind of piece of this ecosystem that we're innovating on has a different end customer and a different way that it kind of fits into the whole industry. So we're definitely evolving from, what originally was this direct to consumer, direct to user, kind of maybe more standard business model, to starting to work with the insurers, now working with the pharmaceutical companies, and then even working on strategic relationships with some of the other companies in the industry, the different software developers or imaging companies. So every new thing that we're trying to work on is targeted at someone different, which definitely brings its own commercialization challenges, and different strategies when it comes to messaging, marketing, sales, all of that stuff. But I think we've positioned ourselves in such a unique place where I think we really are kind of the experts on what the industry looks like and how all of the kind of webs fit together. And we have a very unique perspective on that compared to some of our maybe more siloed peers in the industry, where we are really kind of seeing all of these gaps and realizing that there's a way to kind of fill these gaps all at once instead of having, discrete teams working on all of these kind of disparate solutions.
Okay. All right. So you've worked together now, it must be coming up 10 years, is it? That's since the start? It's been about that long, right? Since you first met.
Yeah, I guess we're on our 9th year. We
Okay.
celebrated our 10th year of friendship last year.
Okay. So what makes the relationship work? Why do you think come on, bands have broken up in less time than you guys have. What keeps that partnership together?
It- It's so true. I mean, I feel like we've outlasted a lot of relationship averages. um, I mean, I'm so lucky, honestly, to have Mackenzie and Elias who understand me, understand my brain. And Mackenzie at this point, we work together every day. We're usually in, at least a meeting per day together, and we not only finish each other's sentences, we'll say them at the same time. And it's like, it's really cute, but it's also really embarrassing. Exactly. And we'll apologize for it at the same time, which doesn't help.
Have you got a different slant on that, Mackenzie, or would you concur that
Oh
is
no,
exactly?
that is exactly what happens, and it's equal parts endearing and embarrassing. And I think depending on who we're talking to at the given moment determines how embarrassing or endearing it might come off. But no, I mean, in addition to just really understanding each other and having a really strong kind of business relationship, I think that the bigger component of why our founding team has worked so well is that we all fill in each other's strengths and weaknesses. So kind of how I like to describe the founding team is Allisa is definitely the ideas person. She always has new ideas. I think she has like this like huge vision for every problem that we're looking at. And so she is constantly coming to us with like different thoughts and ideas and things that we can think about and potentially pursue. Elias is definitely the builder. Like he is your traditional engineer. Like he is great at like tinkering and prototyping, and he's made it possible for us to, prototype things literally in our own homes and labs, with very, very minimal resources and really fast iteration times compared to what I think most companies would be able to do. And then I'm more of like the execution person. Like once I like see the vision and have someone that can build the product, like I can really see how we can make that a reality within the ecosystem that we're operating in. So I think we all complement each other really well and kind of complete this kind of full circle of product development from idea to product to impact.
And how does Elias feel about, being a partnership with two strong women?
I don't think he would have it any other way. Yeah, exactly. Actually, one of the stories, going back to our student days, Elias, being the only male founder of the group, when we were going through an accelerator program and talking about, future fundraising rounds, they actually pointed to him and said, "You should be the CEO. Not only are you the technical founder, but you're also what people expect to see of a hardware company." And I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people don't know that we even have another co-founder. He does not like the limelight. He's happy in his little prototyping cave. He Yeah, I think we really, I think in the beginning underappreciated what it means to have a male founder that's supporting what we're trying to do as female founders. And he really does empower us in every way. Like we have the classic, like if we're all in a room with someone who doesn't know us, they'll direct questions to him and he'll be like, "I don't know, ask them. She's the CEO."
How does that make you feel, though? Or have you built like a shield around it now? You just go, "Do you know what? Yeah, whatever."
Yeah, I don't think you could survive in this industry if you can't create that thick skin. We're constantly underestimated, constantly being mansplained to about our own industry and company. And before they see the MD after my name, people who aren't even physicians will try and mansplain to me how it works in a hospital setting or a clinic setting. And I think we've really built that up over the years. It used to bother us or we would have to just ignore it when we were younger. But now we see the opportunity because our work and our traction speaks for itself.
Speaking for yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we get to take the opportunity to really redirect the conversation and challenge them on their assumptions of like, "Hey, can you explain to me why you think that?" Or like, "Tell me more." I saw that you directed your question at Elias. He's the chief operating officer. Is there a different question that you wanted to ask? Like we're able to like do we build that confidence over time, I think. And our mentors and our investors help with that confidence.
Excellent. So, Mackenzie, what advice would you give to founders about choosing a co-founder? Obviously, how your story it emerged, but is there a specific way that you think co-founders or founders should look for co-founders?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple critical pieces of the equation and kind of piggybacking off of what I said earlier. The first and foremost is you have to fill in your weaknesses. If you can have three of the brightest, best founders in the world, but if you all are experts on the same thing or have all of the same strengths, you're not going to be able to build a holistic and successful company. And so I think that that's first and foremost, is being able to recognize and honestly like be very honest with yourself about what your weaknesses are, or the
Yeah.
gaps that need to be filled, so that you can kind of strategically identify folks that can fill those gaps. I mean, I remember going back kind of to our early days of going through these student level competitions. None of us had formal like business background or academic training. And so the first folks that we brought onto our team during the competition days were business students. So we brought on marketing folks or financial folks that were studying those things in the classroom so they could fill in those gaps, because we knew that we just didn't have the time or the education at that point to be able to do that ourselves. And I think that we've kind of maintained that philosophy going forward, with the folks that we hire. But when building that initial team, I think that that's really, really critical. Um, and then, maybe even more important than that is just personality compatibility, because, if you have, folks that complement each other with strengths and weaknesses, but you just can't fundamentally work together, or you don't understand each other's language, that's never going to work either. And so, I think that that's something that maybe Alyssa and I, and Elias for that matter, kind of had a leg up on already, because Alyssa and I had been research colleagues. So we knew, even though we didn't work together super closely, we at least knew kind of how each other functioned in
Yeah.
a work or professional environment. And so we had a good idea that we would probably be able to have compatibility personality wise in building a company. And then same with Elias. Alyssa and Elias had known each other for many years before starting the company. And so there was already kind of that foundational trust and understanding amongst each other. So yeah, I think it's really important to seek out founders that have that personality compatibility, as well as complement each other with their strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
And I
All right.
and I wanted to double click on that trust part too, because like I think since the vast majority, like the number one reason why founders break up in a startup is because of that like trust factor. And I would trust Mackenzie and Elias with my life and like
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
um and yeah, I think that speaks to like the transparency piece, being honest with yourself, but also like we know exactly what the other founders are doing, feeling, how we can support them, because we know that they'll also ask for help um, if they need it. So
Okay.
I think that's
All right.
like a fundamental thing.
Okay. Well, I can't believe how long we've been chatting. I've been so fascinated by your story. And I'm very grateful for the time that you've given us. I've got one more question each for each of you. Alyssa, I'll start with you. What is one thing that you believe is going to transform ophthalmology in the next, say, 10 years?
That's us, Mu Medical. Is that a cop out?
It's a bit of a cop out, but it works. I was hoping that new medical would be in there somewhere along the line. I mean, do you have kind of new areas, new products in mind, new things that's really going to make a transformation in that space?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's coming in the next 10 years is really every medication that will be optimized with our core technology of microvolume delivery. And when you receive the medication from the pharmacy, it will already have gone through the optimization process. Um, yeah, we really do envision a future where patients at least will not be losing their vision due to barriers to care that are just so silly, like financial barriers or
Yeah,
oversized eye drops contributing to that.
something ridiculous that doesn't even need to be there.
Yeah,
Such an
exactly.
impact on people. Okay. So, Mackenzie, where can listeners follow your work? Where can they learn more? Who do you want to hear from?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Yeah, definitely check out our website. Of course, NanoDropper is our consumer-facing brand, but we also have our operating entity, Mu Medical, has its own website. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about the different pieces that we're building with Mu Medical looking forward, you can check out our website. We're also on all socials, and we love engaging with folks who want to follow our story on social media. So check us out there. And we're honestly interested in hearing from everyone and talking to everyone, whether it is our patients, whether it is doctors that are interested in our solution, um, investors or industry partners are always extremely valuable. And even student entrepreneurs that have their own idea and want to make their own impact. We love, love, love connecting um, with student entrepreneurs who kind of want to figure out how to navigate this journey because I think it is unique because of all the challenges that we talked about previously about being a younger person, especially if they're a female student going into um, a complex industry and trying to figure out how to find your way. So, yeah, everyone and anyone who
All
is
and
interested in
everyone.
what we're doing. Yeah, exactly.
And you saying that has made me think of one more question. So I'm just going to keep you for a little bit longer. What advice would you give to women who want to build companies in healthcare?
I think the first advice is a little more general. Like, I'm a strong proponent of physician leadership in our industry, like outside of the clinic. And so, finding yourself a doctor colleague that will go down this journey with you. And then the second is a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is a solo like a single person sport, and it really isn't. It's a team sport. There's so many people that are willing to help you build and get to your goal. So I would say just reach out to other women entrepreneurs. Um, Cold LinkedIn messages, like they will be answered.
Yeah. Mackenzie, anything to add to that?
I think that really covers it. Yeah, I guess just like um oh, here's a piece of advice that I like to tell um, all folks going into entrepreneurship, but especially I think women who might get a little bit more pushback than is their fair share is that you will be the expert in what you are doing because the nature of entrepreneurship is that you are making something that has never existed before or doing it in a new way. And so, regardless of what you're making, at some point you will literally be the global expert in your niche of what you're building and trust that because you will have people every day telling you their 2 cents and trying to explain to you how to do things different. And it's great to take advice. Of course, advice is always extremely welcome, but you have to maintain that trust in yourself that at the end of the day, you are the expert in that niche thing that you are building. And carry that with you and don't lose sight of that. So that would be
That's a
my advice.
fantastic piece of advice because I think that, that happens to all of us, doesn't it? That where we start and begin to doubt ourselves and you hear somebody else say something and you think maybe they're older and wiser and blah, blah, blah. But hold on to that core belief of why you started this and the stuff that you do now. So fantastic piece of advice there. Ladies, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I wish you every success. I can't wait to follow your journey and see how it progresses. And I'm as blind as a bat without my glasses and my contact lenses and everything else. So I'm pretty sure somewhere down the line, I'm going to need some medication in eye drops and I'll be straight on the phone to you to say, what can you get for me? So, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me for this episode of She Leads Biotech. If today's story inspired you, subscribe, follow, and comment. Because when one woman's voice is heard, many more find theirs. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and keep leading.